Welcome back to day 5 of Pause 40 Words for the 40 Days of Lent. Our word today is still. And our scripture today is from Psalm 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. If you haven't already paused in silence before the Lord, pause this video and do so now. I want to show you a handmade Christmas gift that I received this year. Be still and know. I keep it on the shelf behind me in front of my most used books. This is a popular verse of Scripture. I've seen it on magazines and shirts and stationery. But there's a huge difference between putting this verse on a shelf or sticking it on the fridge and actually living it out. It's hard to be still. At least it's hard for me to be still. It's hard to sit in silence. And if you know me, you know it's really hard for me to be silent. It's hard to sit still and it's hard to be silent when our world is filled with an increasing level of noise and busyness. It shouldn't be a big surprise that we lack personal and intimate knowledge of the one who created us, because we need to be still to know. Be still and know. We need to be still to know God. We need to be still to hear God. We need to be still to experience deeply God's steadfast love. I suspect that that's why deep down inside, many of us long for stillness. Our souls are restless. We're looking for answers. We're yearning to hear God speak clearly, just as he did in the garden with Adam and Eve. And our busy, loud world tells us that we must prove our worth, that we are validated by what we do or by what we have. But the cross, Easter tells us that's a lie. You and I did nothing to earn God's forgiveness. You and I have nothing that can buy God's love. You are deeply loved by God for who you are, not for what you do. The prophet Elijah learned that the hard way. In the book of 1 Kings, chapters 17 and 18, we see the story of Elijah battling the wicked kings of Israel and the false prophets of Baal. It's a powerful story if you haven't read it. 1 Kings, chapter 17 and 18. By chapter 19, Elijah experiences a burnout on a level that we cannot imagine. But God comforts Elijah and reveals himself to him in a still, small voice. If you translated that Hebrew that we translate for still, small voice, it could be translated a sound of sheer silence. It's the silence after the chaos, for Elijah and for us. That's where we hear, where we experience the presence of God. Be still and know that I am God. That's the reason God gave us the fourth commandment, to remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Holy really means set apart. And so we keep the seventh day holy when we set it apart as a day of rest, when we are still and quiet before God. Just as God rested on the seventh day, we are commanded to rest one day a week too. God created 6 days, rested the seventh. God created human beings to be in relationship with him. But unfortunately, we have become human doings. We believe Satan's lie that the world will fall apart if we stop running things, if we stop running, if we stop doing. and we get lost in the busyness and business blizzards of our lives. Being still is our lifeline or our rope to find our way home. It shouldn't surprise you that the daily practice for today is going to be still. See, what I want to tell you now is an honest confession. I've known this in my head. Be still and know that I am God. I've known that for a very long time. But it's only recently that I have begun to put into practice actually being still, sitting in silence before God, waiting to hear God, waiting just for God to still and quiet my heart. And it is making all the difference in my life. So that's why today's daily practice is really part of this whole pause experience. Every day I've asked you to pause and be still. And so if you haven't been spending some time in silence with God before you watch the video, be still. Begin to do so. Remind yourself that God meets you in the silence. Be still so that you can know that God is God.